The Where Our Minds Wander podcast may contain sensitive content. Listener discretion is advised.
Greetings, fellow wanderers, to the places our minds wander.
The house at the end of the dirt road, where disembodied voices whisper and strange sounds make the living shiver.
Where shadows lurk at the edge of the woods, just outside your back door. And mysterious lights speed beyond reason across the clear night sky.
Odd events throughout time that lead you down the rabbit hole.
I'm Wes.
And I'm Beth.
And this is Where Our Minds Wander. Hello and welcome to Where Our Minds Wander, all you fellow wanderers. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, hi everybody. So we have just a quick bit of housekeeping before we get into tonight's stories. First, we want to remind everyone that we have some pretty cool merch in our TeePublic store. We have various designs with our logo on it that you can get on all kinds of things, from coffee mugs to t-shirts to throw pillows to tote bags. You could pretty much fill your house with all kinds of usable items that have our logo on them. So if you're interested in seeing what we have to offer, you could check it out by going to our website at whereourmindswander.com, and then you just click on the store link at the top of the page.
And if you haven't checked out our YouTube channel yet, we're actually pretty excited about how fast it's been growing.
It's pretty exciting.
And if you enjoy our show, tell your friends and family about us and coworkers. Maybe they'd enjoy listening to us also.
And if you want to let us know that you enjoy the show, there are a bunch of ways that you can do that. We love getting emails and that new fan mail feature, especially if you've had your own experiences or if you've actually been to some of the places that we've talked about. So you can email us directly at whereourmindswander@gmail.com, or you can email us through our website.
Yeah, and there's also a place there where you can leave us a voice message if you'd like.
That's right, I forgot about that.
And if you all can, keep those 5-star reviews and comments coming in on your listening platform. Just doing that gives us a major boost on those platforms, and it makes it easier for new listeners to find us.
It does. So for all of you who have been listening to our show, regardless of where or how you listen, we appreciate all of you.
That's right, we do, Beth. And I think that's pretty much everything for tonight's housekeeping.
I think so.
So, with all that said, where did your mind wander for this episode?
Well, earlier this week, as I was parking the car in our driveway, I think I'd said to you that I saw this beautiful robin that was kind of hopping through the yard. And I was just kind of watching it a little bit as I turned the car off. And then all of a sudden, this beautiful robin started pulling what had to have been a 6-inch long earthworm out of the ground. And the whole sight just completely turned my stomach because, first, it was kind of brutal to watch. And second, I'm not the biggest fan of earthworms to begin with. So, I mean, I don't mind earthworms themselves, but in the spring when they start to come up out of the ground, there's a certain smell that may or may not be caused by earthworms, but that smell just turns my stomach. So you can imagine that a giant 6-foot-long, acid-spitting, and electrifying death worm wouldn't be high on my list of things to talk about. But that's what I'm willing to do for our show.
I can't believe worms bother you that much.
I don't mind fishing with them, and I'll hold one in my hand. Like, it doesn't bother me to touch them. It's just the smell of them. And you didn't see that bird trying to pull that thing out of the ground. It was god-awful.
I've seen plenty of birds pull earthworms out of the ground.
Well,
It's really cool because it's kind of like on, what's the show? The dog's eating spaghetti. Oh, my God, I can't remember.
The Lady and the Tramp?
The Lady and the Tramp. You know, when he slurps up the spaghetti into his mouth? That's what it's like.
That is the total opposite of what it was like.
They're stretchy and they're, but at first they're taut when you pull them out of the ground and then all of a sudden it goes whoop.
Yeah, that's exactly what it was. Yes.
Yeah.
It turned my stomach.
I find that entertaining.
Well, hopefully you'll be entertained by my story because tonight I'm talking about the Mongolian Death Worm. In the southern Gobi Desert, people have told stories about the Olgoi Korkoi, or large intestine worm, for centuries. Anywhere from 3 to 6 feet long and shaped like a sausage the width of a man's arm, the Mongolian death worm is said to be blood red in color. It has no eyes, mouth, or nose, but it does have yellow spikes that protrude from both ends of its body. When encountered, it can kill you or your animals in 2 terrifying ways. First, if it's close enough to you, it can spit a yellow corrosive acid-like venom, or if it's too far away from you, it can shoot out an electric current that will electrocute you. Sounds lovely, doesn't it?
Yeah. Doesn't it? It's nothing you want to get close to.
I would have taken out that robin. Mongolian legends say that the death worm likes to lay its eggs in the intestines of camels. Although the Mongolian people living in the southern Gobi Desert region knew about the death worm and tried very, very hard to avoid it, the creature didn't come to the attention of the Western world until one skeptical American paleontologist wrote about it in 1926. Roy Chapman Andrews was an explorer, adventurer, and naturalist who believed that the origins of humankind came from China. He mounted several expeditions to China and Mongolia in the 1920s and was the first person to ever bring back fossil dinosaur eggs to the American Museum of Natural History. He also famously led a caravan of Dodge cars from Peking to the Gobi Desert in 1922. He wrote several books on his theory that mankind began in China, and his goal was to find the oldest human skeletons there to prove his point. He didn't, but he did find those dinosaur eggs and several other prehistoric mammal skeletons that were pretty remarkable. But then the Mongolian government asked him to look for the Olgoi Korkoi. He wrote in On the Trail of Ancient Man, quote, "I doubt whether any of my scientific readers can identify this animal. I could because I had heard of it often." None of those present ever had seen the creature, but they all firmly believed in its existence and described it minutely. It is shaped like a sausage, about 2 feet long, has no head nor legs, and is so poisonous that merely to touch it means instant death. It lives in the most desolate parts of the Gobi Desert, whither we were going. To the Mongols, it seems to be what the dragon is to the Chinese. The premier said that although he had never seen it himself, he knew a man who had and had lived to tell the tale. Then a cabinet minister stated that the cousin of his late wife's sister had also seen it. I promised to produce the Olgoi Korkoi if we chanced to cross its path, and explained how it could be seized by means of long steel collecting forceps. Moreover, I could wear dark glasses, so that the disastrous effects of even looking at so poisonous a creature would be neutralized. The meeting adjourned with the best of feeling, end quote.
That guy's got balls. There's no way I'd go out there with forceps.
and pull it out of the ground?
Yeah.
Yeah. Despite his several successful expeditions, Andrews did not encounter the death worm. He mentioned in his 1932 book, The New Conquest of Central Asia, that although he continued to hear countless tales of the death worm's existence, he remained skeptical. According to Atlas Obscura, two Soviet scientists, A.D. Simakov and Ivan Yefremov, also heard numerous stories about the death worm during their work in the Gobi Desert throughout the 1920s and 1940s. Although the size of the death worm was different depending on who was sharing their story with them, the consensus was that it was sausage-like in appearance and lived under the sand. It was incredibly deadly, and your best bet for surviving an encounter was not to have one at all. Neither Simakov nor Yefremov saw one for themselves. Yefremov was also a science fiction writer who published a short story, The Olgoi Korkoi, in 1944. 40 years later, in 1983, conservationist Yuri Gorilov thought he had solved the mystery of the elusive Mongolian death worm after he heard that an old man had actually found one. Gorilov ran over to the hole, stuck his arm in, and pulled out a Tartar sand boa. Female Tartar sand boas can grow up to 4 feet long, and their heads seem to almost camouflage with the rest of their bodies. Although some locals who were present at the time agreed that it was actually the Mongolian death worm, others disagreed. First, the color was all wrong. Tartar sand boas are brown, red, and black with white sides. It also doesn't attack humans, which doesn't account for the acid-spitting or electric shock tactics used by the death worm. Also, the death worm was said to travel beneath the sand, causing giant waving ripples at the surface. Sand boas also tend to eat rodents, not camels or goats. Convinced that the Mongolian death worm was not a Tartar sand boa, Czech adventurer and cryptozoologist Ivan Mackerel set out to find the cryptid for himself. He had first read about it in Ivan Yefremov's book, and then when he met a Mongolian student in college who shared stories about the death worm, he knew he had to go look for it. He and 3 other like-minded adventurers visited the Gobi Desert 3 times, in 1990, 92, and 2004. The locals were more than willing to share their experiences, including one story about a group of nomadic herders who were crossing the Gobi Desert. They had stopped for a rest when suddenly every single one of their camels fell dead. The herders blamed the death worm, saying it must have sent electricity through the sand as it passed by the animals. One of Mackerel's own guides relayed the story of a previous geologist who had stuck a metal rod into the sand and was instantly electrocuted. When his colleagues rushed to his aid, they saw the sand around the metal rod churn as the head of a Mongolian death worm broke free from the sand and died right there. During their first expedition, the men planned on baiting the death worm with its favorite foods. But since the locals were either unwilling to say or didn't know what those foods would be, the men abandoned their plan. Then Mackerel had the idea to try sound. Going off of the popular science fiction book Dune, he wondered if sound would bring the death worm to the surface, like it brought out the giant sandworms in the novel. Using a motor-driven thumper he'd devised, Mackerel tried for 2 solid months. He was unable to produce any results. When he returned to the Gobi Desert in 1992, he tried small explosives, but that didn't bring out the death worm either. But it was hard to be discouraged when people, like a local shaman, told him that the death worm, quote, is not a living creature of flesh and blood, but a demon of the desert, end quote. Determined, Mackerel returned for a third time in 2004, deploying a small aircraft to survey the dunes and scrublands. He, unfortunately, came up empty. But he scoffs at the idea that the death worm is just a Tartar sand boa, pointing out that local people are well aware of all the various snakes that live in their area, and if that's what it was, that's what they'd say it is. In 2005, the Center for Fortean Zoology got involved, sending zoological reporter Richard Freeman, along with 3 other reporters, to Mongolia. The Center for Fortean Zoology investigates cryptid reports all over the world, and Freeman has been to several countries, including Thailand, India, and Tasmania. Freeman felt that Mackerel's sound experiments and setting off explosives most likely scared off the death worm, so his tactics were a little different. First, they offered to pay locals for information, and they collected several first-hand accounts spanning from 1930 to 2004. To their disappointment, many of these accounts seemed to describe Tartar sand boas. But they pressed on, decided to dam up some waterways since the death worm allegedly also likes wet conditions. Due to logistical problems, they couldn't follow through, though, and ended up having to rely on small traps instead. Freeman left Mongolia, believing that the Mongolian death worm does exist, but that it is some species of snake that has so far been undiscovered. He did express a willingness to go back to Mongolia, if only to prove that there's an unknown species of snake out there in the desert. Teams from all over the world have mounted expeditions to track down the death worm, including England and Australia. But as of today, no one has found any evidence. Not a single photograph has ever been taken of the acid-spitting, electricity-shocking beast. HowStuffWorks.com offers up 3 alternatives for what the Mongolian death worm might be, besides a Tartar sand boa. First, they suggest that perhaps it is a worm lizard, a species of limbless reptile with elongated bodies. Now, when I looked at them online, they do look worm-like, I have to admit. However, as far as I could tell, they are non-venomous, and the only known worm lizard to live in Mongolia went extinct 70 million years ago. Plus, the largest living worm lizards are only 27 inches long.
That's still pretty big.
It is, but it's not 6 feet.
No.
Second, they suggest that perhaps it's a venomous snake. There are 2 known venomous snakes in the Gobi Desert, which I'm sure the people who live there know about and can recognize. And thirdly, they suggest perhaps it is a legless lizard, not to be confused with a worm lizard. A legless lizard looks like a snake, but it has movable eyelids and external ear openings, a forked tongue, and belly scales. All things the Mongolian death worm supposedly does not have. So, maybe the Mongolian death worm is simply an imaginary cryptid that locals made up in order to scare off explorers from foreign lands. It's possible, or maybe it really does exist. If it does, I don't want to see it.
Yeah, I was going to say, out of all the cryptids out there, this one I hope doesn't exist.
But I thought you'd so cute when you saw the two dogs sharing the spaghetti and Lady and the Tramp.
They're not cryptids.
Well, that's true.
They're
no.
Spitting poisonous acid at you or electrocuting you.
No. I think the fact that they're supposed to be blood red in color, too, is very disturbing. Because if you go online and look at all of the different artists' renditions of what they look like, they're downright disgusting.
Yeah, out of all the cryptids out there, this one I found to be, well, I must say, a little far out there.
Yeah.
It just doesn't seem like it could exist.
Well, you would think that they would have photographic evidence of something at this point.
Right.
But you never know.
Well, I wonder what took down those camels.
Right? All of them just dropped dead.
Yeah.
So it had to have been something.
Maybe it's something they ate.
Oh, maybe.
And we'll be right back after this quick break.
Hey, did you know? The slate blue house on Hull Street in Boston is rather unusual. Constructed in the 1850s, it provides just 860 square feet of living space, despite being 4 stories tall. With each story only being 10 feet wide, it can be quite a challenge at dinner parties. Imagine stretching your arms out and touching both walls at all times. Known as the Skinny House, legend says that originally 2 brothers owned a plot of land. When one brother returned home from the Civil War, he found that his brother had built a massive house that spilled over onto his half of the land. Enraged, the veteran built his Skinny House, also known as the Spite House, to block his brother's view of the harbor and access to direct sunlight. More recent research shows that the Skinny House Spite House was originally 1/3 of an 1850s duplex. The other 2/3 were taken down to make room for larger homes, and the Skinny House was left standing. I don't know about you, but I like the Spite House version better. Who'da thunk it? All right, we are back. So, I talked about a cryptid tonight. What are you going to talk about?
Well, I'm pretty sure that a lot of our listeners out there might be feline lovers.
Okay.
Such as yourself. Yeah, I know. We have 2 that we were taking care of until our daughter could take them.
And yet, they're still here.
Years after.
That's all right. We do love them, and I would be sad without them.
Well, I'm glad you would be. No, they are quite cute.
And they are amusing, and they're sweet. We do love our cats.
They are. They do have their moments.
So you're talking about a cat?
Of course.
Okay.
So the year is 1913, and after securing your livestock in their pens and calling your dog inside, you sit down for a late dinner as darkness falls around your farmhouse. After finishing your meal, you and your wife sit by the fireplace. Maybe you share that day's newspaper as the fire warms the room. The night deepens outside, but inside you are content but weary after a long day. Suddenly, your quiet evening is pierced by a hair-raising, terrible scream. It sounds like a woman in mortal pain. Jumping up from your chair, you grab your shotgun from above the fireplace and fling open the front door, peering out into the darkness. At first, all you see is one of your sheep in the front yard. Confused, you wonder how it got out of its enclosure. But before you can investigate, a pair of glowing yellow eyes stops you in your tracks. The creature is like nothing you've ever seen, a massive beast. It looks like a cross between a muscular cat and a dog with sharp and elongated claws and fangs. Its face reminds you of a bobcat, but its dark matted fur is much more dog-like. As it steps closer to your front porch, you realize that it has 6 legs and a long, sinuous tail. That's when it dawns on you. If you live in North Carolina, Texas, Arkansas, or Mississippi, the creature standing before you is the dreaded Wampus Cat. Now, there's some question about how the Wampus Cat got its name. According to Atlas Obscura, the wampus part may have come from the Scottish word wampish, which meant to wave your arms about. In the U.S., the word cattywampus meant something that was absurdly askew, as in the hat on her head was all cattywampus. But by the mid-1800s, cattywampus came to mean an unknown imaginary animal. Throughout the Ozarks, the Wampus Cat was known by several different names: the Wampus Beast, Wampus Wampa, Cherokee Death Cat, Gallywampus, Whistling Wampus, and Catawampus. There were also variations as far as what it looked like. According to fairytalesandmyths.com, people in North Carolina who have encountered the Wampus Cat said it either had black or silver fur. Meanwhile, in other states, its fur was tan. The beast could be anywhere from the size of a very large cat to the size of a small horse. Sometimes it had yellow eyes. Other times, its eyes were red. It might have horns, or it might not. People differed on what its body looked like as well. Some accounts said its front legs were lion-like, and its back legs resembled a bear's. Some people even claim that it had webbed feet, since it seemed perfectly capable of swimming at great speeds. Many accounts said it had 6 legs, not 4. It could walk on its hind legs like a human and use the 2 front legs for battle. According to HowStuffWorks.com, the Wampus Cat made all kinds of strange sounds, from that horrible woman-like screaming to a sound like, quote, an elephant with its head in a rain barrel. I can't even imagine it.
I was going to say, can you demonstrate for us what that would sound like?
No, I think I'll pass on that one. It also possessed some supernatural-like abilities. First, when it did scream, it was ear-piercing to the point of driving people insane. Second, its multiple legs made it incredibly fast, agile, and stealthy, which seems ironic since you would think that more legs would make it less agile and stealthy. It also had the ability to shapeshift or turn completely invisible. In the 30-year period of its reign of terror, the Wampus Cat was deemed responsible for the deaths of more than 100 dogs, the disappearances of several children, and unexplained noises after nightfall. The Wampus Cat was first spotted in Sherman, Texas in 1908. According to the radio station Mix 94.1 out of Amarillo, Texas, a local newspaper article described a strange encounter between a hunting party and the creature. One evening, the hunters and their dogs were out to catch some game. At one point, their dogs all ran to a specific tree and began barking uncontrollably at whatever was above their heads. One brave hunter climbed the tree and saw something that looked like a bobcat. He was able to shoot it, but rather than falling to the ground, the creature shrieked like a woman and then leapt to the ground. The dogs encircled it, barking and ready to attack, but the Wampus Cat simply vanished. 13 years later, the town of Quitman, Mississippi, had a series of chilling encounters after massive floods that may have caused the Wampus Cat to hunt within the borders of their town. 102 dog skeletons were found, all completely stripped of their fur and flesh. A year later in 1914, the town of Arkadelphia, Arkansas, pretty much went to war against a Wampus Cat. Described as more savage than a lion with a 9-foot tail, like a kangaroo's, but obviously much bigger, the Wampus Cat was spotted all throughout the woods of Clark County. According to Atlas Obscura, one reporter said the Wampus Cat had, quote, the head and body of a cat with long black fur spotted with white. Its legs were short and stocky, with front feet that were a cross between a bear's and a badger's, and the back feet were cloven like a deer's. In this case, the people of Arkadelphia actually caught the Wampus Cat and put the still living animal on display in the town for 3 full days. Think about that, 3 full days.
And they actually caught it.
Yes. It didn't die in captivity. It escaped.
Uh-oh, and I bet it was pissed.
The frenzied townsfolk then formed hunting parties to try and recapture it. The same reporter said, quote, "The woods are now being scoured for it and its mate, but the creatures had hightailed it out of the county." End quote.
So they thought it had a mate, too.
Yes.
So it was in its cage, probably angry as heck and wanting to get back to its mate. Poor thing.
Yeah.
I feel bad for it.
Well.
Maybe not so much.
Maybe it was just horny.
Well, I'm thinking I know you pretty well. You're probably going to tell me some horrible things that it did, and then I'm not going to feel bad for it. So, continue.
Perhaps it made a long journey east, because the Wampus Cat next showed up in the suburbs of Knoxville, Tennessee in 1918. In Fountain City, more dogs were being killed, although this time instead of finding just their skeletons, devastated pet owners were discovering the hearts and livers torn out of their animals by something razor sharp. A mule was mysteriously killed in Whittle Springs, and several chickens were crushed and drained of their blood in the town of Inskip. Some even suggested an escaped lion from a traveling circus, but people who actually spotted the creature described it as gray with white spots, and it had the ability to jump 12 feet in the air. When a zoologist was called in from the University of Tennessee and couldn't identify any of the tracks, people feared that it was the Wampus Cat. One person even suspected that it was, quote, the devil in the shape of a tiger who had come here to scare some of the wicked folks into doing right. The local newspaper even offered up a $100 reward for the creature, and other businesses pitched in too. Whoever shot and killed the Wampus Cat would also receive a Kodak camera from Coleman's drugstore, $5 in gold from J.E. Lutz & Co. Insurance, and a woman's tailored coat suit if a lady marksman kills the varmint, or a hat from Askin & Marine Co. if a man shot the creature. Wow, that's quite the reward.
That is quite the loot. It's a bounty for sure.
They had something for everyone.
Mm-hmm. I like that they didn't assume that a man was going to kill it.
I know, isn't that interesting?
That's pretty cool.
So on Thanksgiving morning of 1918, 75 men armed with shotguns, rifles and bows and arrows set out to kill the Wampus Cat. Despite searching all day, no one was able to take it down, let alone even set eyes on it. 2 days later, according to Atlas Obscura, a woman claimed to be attacked by the creature. An enterprising shopkeeper purchased her torn dress and put it on display in his shop window, drawing in huge crowds of curious looky-loos, or onlookers.
I like looky-loos.
So don't I.
You're just worried that maybe people that aren't from around here wouldn't know what a looky-loo is.
Well, I think looky-loos, everybody would probably know that.
Right. They were curious. They were looky-loos.
It just rolls off your tongue. Children even included references to the Wampus Cat in their letters to Santa that year. Or at least one child did, writing, quote, "Dear Mr. Santa, I want you to bring me a wagon and an auto and a gun so I can shoot the Wampus."
Oh, dear Mr. Santa. That's cute.
With the new year came a fresh perspective, with the numbers of sightings dropping to 0. But in nearby Benton, Tennessee, the sightings increased. Another group of hunters managed to corner a strange creature in a cave along the Ocoee River. Eventually, they were able to catch the Wampus Cat and get it into a cage as well. Again, townsfolk flocked to see the strange creature, which none of them could identify. Now, during my research, I wasn't able to find how long they had it or whatever happened to it. But from what I could gather, from early 1919 to late in the year of 1923, the Wampus Cat seemed to disappear. Now, I assumed that the people of Western Tennessee were pretty relieved about this. That is, until February of that year, when the Wampus Cat returned once again. Luckily, it had returned just in writing. An article in the February 15th edition of the Greenville Democratic Sun revealed that the Wampus Cat had been sighted, but it had now been sighted in Virginia.
Wow, it really got around.
It did. The headline, Reign of Terror Caused by Raids of Wampus in the Virginia Swamps, says it all. According to the Greenville Sun website, the 1923 articles went on to say that some sort of extinct species sighted in Norfolk was eating their dogs, pigs, and other animals. Frightened parents were keeping their children close to home at all times. One interesting side note that I found in the Greenville Sun article was that in 1930, a reverend with the last name Wampus had decided it was time to move his family out of the area.
Oh, that poor guy.
Can you imagine?
Oh, no. He was probably sick of it. All the jokes and people making fun of his name and his kids being bullied, I can imagine.
I've never heard anybody with the last name of Wampus.
Well,
that is unusual.
That is unusual.
By 1931, the Wampus Cat was sighted again, this time in North Carolina, centered around Iredell County. The creature was true to form, feasting on livestock and causing considerable concern among the townsfolk. Whether it had been one creature or many, the Wampus Cat sightings pretty much stopped after 1931. But the folklore surrounding the Wampus Cat origin has definitely lived on. One possibility, according to HowStuffWorks.com, is that European folklore, specifically Scottish, is that the Wampus Cat was originally a human woman who was accused of performing witchcraft, and she was transformed into a cat-woman hybrid creature. When Scottish immigrants arrived in the Appalachian region, their legend was mixed in with existing American legends. There are also two legends related to the Cherokee people of the area. In one, a Cherokee woman named Running Deer wanted revenge on the spirit of madness for driving her husband, Standing Bear, insane. Instructed to wear a mask in the shape of a mountain cat, she was able to defeat the spirit of madness. The legend goes on to say that the Wampus Cat is really the incarnation of Running Deer, trying to drive dark forces out of Cherokee land. The dark forces would be the white settlers, of course. Another Cherokee legend says that a jealous woman once put on a robe made out of a mountain lion pelt in order to spy on her husband. She wasn't very stealthy and got caught. Another version says that she wore the mountain lion pelt to spy on a secret ceremony. Either way, when she was caught, she was punished by the medicine man, who made her wear the mountain lion pelt forever, turning her spirit into the Wampus Cat. Those who wanted a more mundane explanation for the Wampus Cat sightings believe that it was most likely more than one cougar, puma, or panther. Although all three of those wildcats were considered completely extinct in that area by the year 1900, there have been occasional sightings from the 1940s all the way up to last year. Despite wildlife officials saying that all these cases are misidentification and there's no concrete evidence that wildcats still live there, there was a confirmed sighting on a farm in Kentucky in 2014. An officer from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife shot and killed a confirmed cougar that he felt was a danger to the public. So, whether the Wampus Cat was a cryptid or a known wildcat doesn't lessen the Wampus Cat legacy, of course. Consider this as proof, There are 5 high schools from Louisiana, Texas, Idaho, Oklahoma, and Arkansas who proudly have the Wampus Cat as their school mascot.
That's cool. That's neat that the legend would live on enough that they would make the Wampus Cat their mascot. It's a formidable opponent, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I love the Native American legends.
Yeah.
About the Wampus Cat.
Yeah. That's
I find those intriguing.
Mm-hmm. I'd never heard of it before.
No?
No. And you do see videos and stuff quite often about people saying that, there's a cougar or a panther in their backyard or whatever. You do see those.
Yeah, I had read about this quite a long time ago, but I put it kind of on the back burner. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, the Wampus Cat. It'd be perfect for this episode.
It would be. We've got a death worm and a Wampus Cat.
I know. I'd rather have the Wampus Cat around.
Well, I don't know if I'd want either one of them around, but I guess.
Well, if I had to pick, be a Wampus Cat. You know what? I'd give it some catnip. Get a little scratching post.
And you'd have a pet?
A little bed.
One of those little feathers hanging on one of those poles.
Box. You just need a cardboard box and some catnip, and you can tame the Wampus Cat.
You think so?
Yes.
And it scratches itself with all 6 legs?
Well, imagine that. When your cat lays on you and it needs you?
Yeah.
What a hell of a massage that would be.
Yeah, because it's so comfortable when they do it with 2 legs.
Well, can't have it all.
No. That's because our cats don't do that to you. They just do it to me. And you think it's hysterically funny.
Well, you're fluffy and I'm not.
Wow. You and I will be having a different discussion after we're done taping.
There won't be any massages involved, I suppose.
No.
All right. Well, with that said, Beth, you want to tell everybody about our sources?
Yes, I do. So, as always, if you want to check our sources, you can find them in our show notes. It's where we got our jumping off point for putting our episode together. And there's always way more that you can check out and read for yourselves. That's it. You're looking at me like you think there's more.
No, there's cars going by.
Well,
all these tourists going up and down the street.
And motorcycles.
Wanting to go see the statue of Samuel D. Champlain.
Well, it is a very nice spot.
It is beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I love living here, but it's too bad.
We need to be able to put signs up in the front yard that say, "Quiet, please."
Yes.
We're recording.
Well, that about wraps it up. Join us again next week for an all-new episode of Where Our Minds Wander.
See you soon.